Welcome everyone. Parshas Balak. So we have the big story, the famous story of Balak coming to hire Bilam to curse the Jews. Or Parsha. Now, there's a fascinating thing the Talmud says about this Parsha. Everyone knows you go to shul, you have different experience. Some people like to go, some people go. And there's different amount of time. Some shuls, some Shabbos go for a long time, shorter. Can you imagine now if, in addition to hearing Parshas Balak that we heard in this week's Torah portion, you would say that 2 times a day, every day? It'd be a massive undertaking. And yet the Gemara says that this parsha, for some reason, was so important that the Chachamim, their sages, wanted to institute saying Parshas Balak 2 times a day in the Kriya Shema. Say Shema, and you have to be the whole Parshas Balak. Incredible. So this was the Chachamim wanted to do. Gemara says in Brachas, and then they came out that no, it would be Torah. Sibura, it'd be too difficult for people to do it, and they didn't. Okay. But what about this parsha is so incredible, so unique, that the sages wanted to institute it to be 2 times every day in the Shema? What is it? I understand this. So I want to share with you what Rav Tzadok Cohen says. Well, in the famous Gemara, the Gemara says that all Kol Yisrael, all Jews have a portion of Olam Haba, right? All Jews, Kol Yisrael, they have a portion of the world to come. There's a pasuk. Great, fantastic. But then it says, except for these people. Then it gives categories of people. The categories of the people are then summed up by, according to Tzadok, the 7 individuals that don't have a portion of the world to come. 3 kings, Achav, Menashe, and Yeravam, and 4 regular people, Doag, and Gehazi, Gehazi, and slipped my mind now. Achitophel. The 7th we'll talk about in a second. So those 7, there are a portion of the world to come, which what Tzadok learns is not, when you hear the number 7, it's not arbitrary. It happens to be 7. He says these are 7 categories. And he lines them up with the 7 types of people that it says before, there are a portion of the world to come. These are 7 categories. People who are like Yeravam ben Nevat, people who are like Menashe. They have the same idea, they have the same approach. But why 7? 7 is a significant number. What does 7 represent? So we know 7 is it's called Zion Midas, the 7 expressions in this world. There are 7 days a week, 6 days, and then the Shabbos. You know, there are 10 spirot, 3 are above, 3 are specific to mind, and then the 7 are the traits that come out in the world. So there are 7. So the simple meaning is that is the upper realms, the 3 above that can't be damaged. But the 7, there are 7 types of people that have no portion of the world to come, and they will line up with these 7 individuals. And they knew there were 7. The reason why they knew there were 7 is because just like in the system of holiness, there's 7 traits in the positive. There have to be 7 that fall out, and those are the negative. So they started listing the 7 people. They had 1, 2, came up at 6, and then they wanted to pick the 7th. Who was the 7th that the sages wanted to say had no portion of the world to come? Believe it or not, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says it was going to be the great King Shlomo Melech, who was supposed to be the idea of Mashiach. He really was, in the sense that he was the Mashiach, That's why it says he's Ben David, and he was the word Shlomo is Shalem, was whole. He was the 15th generation from Avram, and the lunar cycle 15 is when the moon is full, and that was the greatest time for the Jews. It was when one was under their own fruit tree, their fano, the fig tree, and their vine, and the world was perfect. The world really was. It was a part of potential the world to come. There were no famines, everything was great. But somehow Shlomo did not succeed. And the text says that later on in his life, his wives led him astray. Okay. Now, just to note, they obviously did not lead him astray. But the Medrash says it's better that Shlomo would be cleaning sewage than have this said about him that his heart was led astray. But it means he was not able to control his wives. What was he doing? He married 1,000 wives, the princesses of every nation, and his goal was this was the way to be the Mashiach, to spread Hashem's Torah to the whole world, that every princess had their nation under them, and Shlomo now was moving them towards Kedusha, towards holiness. And they would convert, or they would become Ger Gurim, or they would be the non-Jews that would be in the world who would accept the Torah. But it didn't work for him. Why not? Because the Torah says as a king, he can't have many wives. So he thought the famous teaching, it says there are 3 reasons the king can't do things he can't do. And Torah tells us what? You can't have too many wives, you can't have too much money, you can't have too many horses. And Shlomo said, I can handle it. Because he was the wisest of all people. So he thought he could handle it, and he did it. And although Shlomo was the greatest of the great, but it didn't work. And even though he did himself worship idols, his wives, he couldn't control them, and these things were happening. So the Chachamim thought, for who Shlomo was and what he was trying to do, he was the 7th. And when they were making this list of the 7 people that don't have a portion of the world to come, Shlomo was going to be the 7th. So the Gemara says that when they were starting to count Shlomo amongst people that have no portion of the world to come, it says that David, the image of David, came to them and pleaded, "No, please don't do this." So they said, "No, we love you, David, but no. We're the sages, and we have to figure out what it is." And our logic tells us that Shlomo, for everything he tried to do but did not do right, and the mistakes that happened, he's one of the people that's out. Didn't listen. Then what happens? The Gemara says a fire came down and burnt their chairs where they were sitting, their benches. That should be a sign, right? They said, no, Irish Mar, we don't listen to these things. We have to apply our logic. Shlomo seems to be the one that's out. Then what happened was a heavenly voice came out, a gospel came out, and talked, and it's Pasuk Mishlei, and talked about this person that's Zoriz, that's so fast to do things. Hashem was telling them, how could you put Shlomo into, how could you say he's one of the no portion will come? He built the base of Mikdash with alacrity and all these things. And they said, okay, right, very, very nice, but very nice that he did good things, but his failure was too great, and he opened up a Pandora's box of things that were very, very negative. It says the night that Shlomo Melech married Bas Paro, and thinking he was going to, bring the whole part of the impurity of Egypt into holiness. It says that moment Hashem sent the Malach Gabriel, and he put a stick in the ocean, the Mediterranean, and and this island started to form, and eventually was going to end up being Rome. So that happened that night. First night where Shlomo's and it says that he inaugurated the base of Mikdash, and the Medrash says that he was up all night with Bas Paro. He was teaching him all these things, and he was seeing all the stars and everything. And it's strange Medrash, but it seemed like his room was now transferred into some kind of planetarium of sorts. And it says that next morning he wasn't on time to open the base of Mikdash. Wasn't in time for minyan, and he had the keys. And that's when Yeravam, who's going to become the breakaway king of the 10 tribes, it says that he rebuked Shlomo. They had to run away. And eventually that person from that whole incident is going to become the person who's going to lead the 10 tribes away and cause all the problems that happen. So the sages said Shlomo was out. It was very nice. The heavenly voice says he did great things, but he failed on certain levels, and it was terrible. Then another Baskel comes out. And this Baskel says, goes a pasuk in Eov, from you, the sages, you are the ones who give reward and decide who's in, who's out. Hashem says, that's up to me. You think you know, you think you understand Shlomo, you don't. And desist. When the sages hear that Baskel, I have a voice, they stop. They say, okay, our logic tells us Shlomo's out, but now Hashem's saying we can't rely on our logic. It's not up to us. All right, so they desisted. Now, they had a problem though. They knew there were 7 people that were the paradigm of the people that don't have portion of the world to come. And it's not Shlomo. Who's the 7th going to be? So it says they counted Bilam as the 7th. Now that's very bizarre because Bilam is not Jewish. And the Mishnah says all of Israel portion of the world to come, except for these people. So when you say except for Bilam, it doesn't make any sense. He wasn't Jewish in the first place. So the Rizal had a very fascinating question. He says, in the vision of Bilam, he says, Tamas nafshi masishar, that his nefesh should die like the righteous Jews. And the Rizal says, why is that included in the vision of Bilam? I mean, first of all, what do we care about what he wants? He wants to die like a Jew. Okay, great. But why do we have to hear that? Second of all, it wasn't even true. He didn't die like a Jew. He didn't die in a good death. He was killed by the sword. Right? Pinchas later on, this Parshas is going to come and catch him by the sword and kill him. So it didn't happen. So what was this request of Bilam, and how did that play out? The answer is that his request was answered. He didn't say Tom was goofy, his body should die. He says Thomas nafshi. He wanted that his soul should somehow be included in the Jewish system. And it was included amongst the Jews who are out. Very deep thing. Maybe we'll explain about what that means in a second. But his prayer was answered. It was true. He died in the sense his soul had a death of the Jews that are cut out. And therefore, the lowest level of Jew, which is what he was able to comprehend, he wasn't able to fathom the tzaddikim. When he wanted to curse the Jews, he looked at the outermost part because that's all he understood, which is true today also. You have a guy, non-Jew, who doesn't like the Jews. He doesn't fathom Moshe Feinstein. He doesn't fathom, the Gedolim. He fathoms the Jews that are going around who are off. That's what he thinks a Jew is. So Bilam had some understanding of the Jews. He couldn't really understand the higher level. He understood the lowest level. So, okay, your prayer is answered. The lowest of the Jews, you'll be included in that list. So what happened was Bilam was the 7th in this list of people, no portion of the world to come. Okay, but we have to understand this. Why is it so important they get 7? Why is it so important that Shlomo and no other Jew is listed as the 7th? Right? Maybe they could have found another bad Jew. They found Bilam. He wasn't even Jewish. There was no one else. There was no other bad Jew they could have put in as the 7th. So we have to understand what the idea of the 7th is, which is the idea of Malchus. Malchus is that everything that precedes the six traits that perceive. We have the right hand, the left hand, the center, the right leg, left leg, the reproductive organ. It's moving and it's giving. And it's giving to something that receives and contains everything. Okay? The malchus is usually called the female. The male will give to the female, and the female now receives it and contains, takes the seed and builds everything. And everything is built from there. So the malchus contains all of the traits that lead up to a summation from which now the next level is now revealed, which is like a child being born. The 6 days of the week all lead to Shabbos. Shabbos is the seventh, and is now the sum total. All the work you did the whole week is now going to be surmised in the seventh, and that's going to be the energy for your next week. Right? It's exactly how it works. If you had a good week, then of holy things, and Shabbos is a culmination, and it now puts together the whole week as the seventh, and now it's the energy that leads you into another week of mitzvahs, because it is now the energy pack for the next week. So, which, as an aside, which is why the famous halacha says that if a person's in the desert and they don't, they lose track one Shabbos. So what do? There's two opinions. One is they count 6 days from when they don't know anymore, and the seventh is Shabbos. And the second opinion is they start that day as Shabbos, and then they count afterwards. That's the first day Shabbos. It's the same idea here. One idea of Shabbos is the culmination of the week. So one opinion is you count 6 days, and then the culmination, that's the seventh. You don't know what it is. You're in the desert. Count 6 days and seventh is Shabbos. The other one is no. It's the energy pack for the next week, and start now, and then it'll lead you to the next week. And they're both true. That's why, really, in the creation story, the Shabbos is the last day. I mean, Adam was supposed to be created on Shabbos, but Hashem was not, the world was in perfection in Shabbos, so he's created in the sixth going into the seventh. But from one perspective, Shabbos creation starts leading into Shabbos as the culmination. And the other side, for Adam, Adam and Eve, that created on Shabbos essentially, even though it's leading into, but the idea is it was supposed to be on Shabbos, moved up. So they're created in going into Shabbos, and Shabbos is their energy pack for the next week. So the seventh is the summation. And therefore, Tzaddik says, if the seventh level, the seventh person that was said that has no portion of what to come would be a Jew, that would mean that there's a place where there's some Jews that have no portion of what to come, and that's not true. And therefore, even though the sages applied their logic and said it's got to be Shlomo, Hashem said, no, you don't understand. It's deeper than what you think. It's no Jew. It was Bilam. And Bilam now is the seventh. Because in the level that includes all of us, it can't be that a Jew has no portion of the world to come. Every single Jew will have a portion of the world to come. Wait a minute. What do we say? The Mishnah just said that these 7 categories don't. And even if the seventh is not Jewish, the first 6 were Jewish. So the Gemara says later on, it says, even though the Mishnah says there are Jews that have no portion of the world to come, the Dorshei Reshumos, these scholars, said in reality they all have a portion of the world to come. All of them. What does that mean? Just said they don't. The Dorshei Reshumos, you know what that means? The Dorshei Reshumos means the ones who are Doresh, they understand. The Roshem is the imprint. To the eyes of the sages of the Mishnah, these guys are terrible. Yeravam, Achav, Menashe, they did the terrible things. They're certainly out. That's what the logic says. And the Bali Mishnah, the ones who wrote the Mishnah, had to apply the human logic. But if you look at the imprint, you'll see that every Jew is a place where he still has a portion of the world to come. Why? Because it says the Bilti Dachmer Miach, no one will be lost. Hashem will make sure that there's a place, what's called a Pintel Yid, the point of the Jew, that will be able to be cleaned up and get into the world to come. That is what the ones who could read the imprint see. That's what it says. Tzach says in another place, he says that there's a famous saying, it says that if a person gets married to a woman, says, I'm married on a Christian, I'm a tzaddik, I'm a righteous, holy, righteous person. So, I don't know, we don't know this guy he's a bum. What happens if we know he's not a righteous guy? It still says that you have to be concerned it's a marriage. Why? Because if he thought for a minute, I don't like what I'm doing, and I really want to leave this, that is still a level of tshuva, where he's now could be called a tzaddik, a righteous person, to be able to be married. So he said, I'm married to the Christian, I'm a tzaddik, and we know he's not, but who knows? Maybe he thought for a second, you know what, I want to leave my bad ways, and that's enough. That's called a change, called tshuva. Plus it says, Rishoyim, evil people are always full of regrets. A Jewish person does something, and he looks like he is the worst of the worst, and he's having a great time in his yacht doing all these terrible things. There's a place in him where he's like, it's not good. My life's meaningless. He regrets it. Therefore, that says that on the gates of going into Gehenna, so all the Jews regret the way they lived if they didn't live properly. So therefore, there's a place, and it has to be cleaned up. It shouldn't be thought that, oh yeah, do whatever you want, you're going to get the world to come. No, it's a hard cleanup. Person does something that's bad, you can't say Hashem is mavater. Gemara says, whoever says Hashem lets things go, we say let his life go, because that's not the way the world's built. The world's built that Hashem wants you to earn it yourself. And therefore, if you do the wrong things, there will be consequences. Korach, we learned a few weeks ago, it says he's still in Gehenna. He's still burning up every day saying, Moshe is true. The Torah Emes, Torah is true, and we guys, all the people of Korach are all liars. And if you say that inside of a fire for a couple thousand years, you're going to get the point, right? And when they get the point, they can go into the world to come. As it says, the end line of the verse says, "Tzaddik katamayafrach." Until it says, a righteous person will flower like a palm tree, and the last letters spell the word Korach. Tzaddik. Guf, katamar, reish, yifrach. He will expand, he'll blossom. That's the word Korach, because Korach in the future will also get out. But it's a long process. But Hashem has infinite ways. It could be Gehenna, it could be Gilgulim coming back. The story of Acher. Acher was a great tzaddik. Talmud Chacham, but he was one of the four that entered into the Parshas, and he became a heretic. And when he died, there was a question in the heavens what to do with him. Can't stick him in Gehenna. He knows a lot of Torah. His Torah protects him from Gehenna, from the fires of the. Again, it's not physical fire, obviously. It's the spiritual reparations a person has to go through when they live their life improperly. So he can't go into Gehenna because he was a Torah scholar. But he can't go in the world to come because he was a heretic. So what do you do? So it says that his student Rabbi Meir davened to Hashem that to get his rabbi into Gehenna, into hell. In a special prayer, please let his rabbi get into Gehenna. And it says, I mean, I don't know if we would have seen it, but the Chachamim, so they saw fire, smoke coming out of the grave of Acher, this heretic, former great rabbi, heretic. They saw smoke coming out of his kever. I mean, if we passed by, we'd see it, but they saw it. They saw the what was going on. And years later, it's like about 150 years later. It's 150 years. The smoke coming out of his grave. So Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yochanan was much later, 50 years later, said one of our scholars, he fell. We can't pull him out. We got to do something. And he says when he dies, he says, okay, a student got him and burned his rabbi, but when Rabbi Yochanan dies, he's going to pick him out of Gehenna. And so it was. When Rabbi Yochanan died, whatever his merit, he learned things from Rabbi Meir, who learned them from Acher, and Acher got out. And the smoke stopped. So it doesn't mean that, oh, yeah, every Jew is a portion of the come, doesn't do what you want to do. It doesn't mean that. But it means that Hashem is going to make sure one way or another. And why? Because the core is pure. The core is holy. And so sometimes you got to take a garment that has a lot of filth and you got to wash it and bleach it and do all these things. But in the end, it still stays what it is because the root of it is pure. So that's what happened. So they put Bilam in. Now, this is amazing thing the Medrash says. The Medrash says, there's a pasuk in Mishnah, talk about a mochiach, a person who rebukes somebody, afterwards is good for them, as opposed to someone who's called machlik lashon. Somebody, machlik lashon means it's better the person who rebukes than the person who makes you trip up with his tongue. Who is the one that says it rebukes and it's good? It's Moshe. The end of the pasuk says, "Mimachlik lashon," for the one who makes you stumble through his tongue. That's Bilam. Bilam, in all of his approach, which was he had one eye, and it's not arbitrary, because one eye is supposed to be seeing Hashem's greatness. The other one, you got to see that you're not Hashem. See your own shortcomings. Bilam had one eye. He only saw himself. He can only see negative. He couldn't use both eyes. He couldn't use one eye to see what he's supposed to, the greatness of Hashem and the littlest of himself. He uses one negative eye to see his own greatness and everyone else's problems. So he had one eye, he wasn't able to balance. He had one eye, he saw everything negatively. When Hashem gives him nevuah, which is, the big discussion everyone has, how could he got nevuah? But the conclusion of the sages is Hashem gave him for the honor of the Jewish people, or people of the nations of the world shouldn't say there was we didn't have a prophet. So when Bilam, without being worthy, Hashem gives him a level of nevuah, whatever that is, we're not going to that today, but it doesn't make him holy. It makes him make the Jews stumble. We know he gave the advice to make the Jews sin, and 24,000 died. And that's one of the things the Medrash says, that why Hashem loves the Jewish people. Because when he gives them greatness, they make themselves smaller. If I give you greatness, you say, see how great I am. But if you really understand that your greatness comes from Hashem, that you are a conduit, then the more greatness he gives, the more you make yourself small, not greater. Hashem gives you prophecy, and you realize, wow, I'm nothing. I was made from nothing, and now I'm receiving a transmission from Master of the Universe, Kadosh Baruch Hu. You should get humility. But Bilam got more haughtiness, and it actually made him worse in a certain sense because it elevated him to make the Jews stumble. But what is this quality that he made us slip with his tongue? Okay, so you can learn to give bad advice, to go and to make the Midianite and Moabite women try to make the Jews sin. Ratzak says another thing, which is amazing. He says, Bilam in his prophecy said something, and this is what he said. We started out this year talking about the idea of the rabbis wanted to put the whole story of Bilam, Parshas Balak, they wanted to put that whole thing in the Kriya Shema. And we said, they decided not to because it was too long. But what about it? What about Parshas Bilam? Story of Bilam, Parshas Balak. What about that was it that the rabbi said, this is something to put in the Kriya Shema? So the Gemara says, because there's a pasuk there that says, Korah, Shachav Ka'ari, he bends over and he lies down like a lion. Ukilavi, and like either a lioness or a lion protecting his young. Mi kimenu, who could raise him? That pasuk is the pasuk the rabbi said we got to put all of this Parshas Balak in. That verse that Bilam says that the Jewish people are Korah, they crouch and they lie like a lion and get up like a lion with protecting its young. That's the verse we have to put in. What's so great about that verse? What does that mean? So Rashi says, well, because It has lying down and getting up. That's Kriya Shema. But it's very hard to understand. What does Rashi mean by that? Rashi's giving us the tip of the iceberg. You know why that verse they wanted to put into Kriya Shema? Because Kriya Shema is taking on all Malchut Shamayim, the yoke of heaven, the old mitzvahs, the yoke of the mitzvahs. So a person could say, this is so hard, I can't do it. I can't do it. So what happens? So we have the verse that Bilam said, and this is how Bilam got us to stumble. Bilam said, you know what? Jews, you all have a portion in the world to come. Don't worry. You guys, I wish I was like you. You all, no matter what you do, Hashem loves you. Even if you're like a lion, you're Korah, you fall down, you'll still lie like a lion and get up like a lion. No matter what you do, you all have a portion of the world to come. That was the slippery slope that he tripped the Jews up. His prayer was, his prophecy was, I want to be like them. No matter what they do, they're in. The nations of the world have a portion of the world to come too, when they act righteous. But if someone's evil, he can lose a portion of the world to come. Every Jew has a portion no matter what. And that's exactly how Bilam tripped them up. He told them that. He said, he says, no matter what you do, Hashem doesn't see the problems in you. He loves you no matter what. I wish I was like you. And even if you Korah, even if you fall down, you shachav ka'arya, like a lion, kilavi, like a lion protecting his young, mi kimenu. Mi kimenu can mean who will raise him up, but the deeper meaning of the word mi is a phrase the sages refer to an aspect of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's way of relating to us. Mi is mem yuz gematria 50 shart bina. It's called a certain level of Hashem's relating to us. Bina, I get that right now. But mi kimenu means Hashem will raise him up. That was the stumbling block Bilam put in front of us. But that's exactly why the sages wanted to put it into the Kriya Shema. Because when on one part I'm thinking, it's so hard, it's so difficult. So the sages wanted to give us comfort and say, you know what? But no matter what, you're going to get there. That's why they wanted to put in the Kriya Shema. Because he says, even if you fall, you're going to get there in the end. You're a portion of the world to come. Bilam, in his riches and his evilness, he had the bad eye, and he gave us this great understanding that we all have a portion of the world to come in order to trip us. Imagine you go on Shabbos, you go to the beach in Tel Aviv, and you take a megaphone with you and you say, everybody who is here on the beach, all Jews know, no matter what you do, you have a portion of the world to come. Yeah, let's party. That's not the point. That's not the point. Yes, the tremendous comfort. And that's why the rabbis wanted to put it in the Shema. When you feel the yoke of Torah is difficult and you're afraid you might not succeed, be happy. Hashem will help you get there one way or another. May have some, you don't act good, it's not going to be, you don't want to take the hard route. You don't want to be like Korach and sitting there and get him for 1,000 years, or all the other ones, you don't want that. So you want to do it out of your own free will. Why do you want to do it? It's amazing. Because a human being wants to be great. A human being is made b'tselem Elokim, in the image of Hashem. It's natural to want to be the greatest we can be. That's ambition. In the secular world, it's used for negative things. We use it to be like Hashem. And that's why people want growth. They don't realize it. They think, I'll be better off if I have ambition to make money and to have power and all these bad things. But the truth is that ambition in its root is what it means to be made. You want to be great because you want to be great. And so therefore you want to take on the mitzvahs and you want to take on the yoke of heaven, all those things. But there's a place where we get very scared because as I mess up, I'm only a person. I'm going to make mistakes. It's a verse. It says that there's not a side that everyone makes mistakes. So I'm afraid. Don't be afraid. Hashem is going to get us there. And that's why the rabbis wanted to put it in the Kriya Shema. When you're taking on the yoke of heaven and you're willing to do it, you want to do it, but you're afraid. Don't be afraid. It's like Bilam said. He wanted to say it to get everyone to stay on the beach and do their things and go with the Midianite women because we'll go with the Moabite Midianite women because we're gonna anyway. It was gonna get the Olam Haba. What's there? Bilam just said it. That's bad. That's not good. But when you do it from understanding that you want to be like Hashem, that's the mitzvah. Just like he's compassionate, you be compassionate. You want this. This is who you are. But don't be afraid because he's going to get us there one way or another. I want to try to do right. I want to try to do right because the main reason why you want to try to do right is because that's the right way to do it. I want to get there. I want to get there because that's me. That's who I am, trying to emulate God. That's the main reason. The second reason also why you want to get there that way and not by Hashem doing all the ways he will do to make us get there in the end is because the other way is actually a lot harder, a lot worse. Acher, I don't know how many years of pleasure he had doing his heretical things. We know he's at least 150 years burning up in real fire. I mean, physical fire, real fire. I once heard from Moshe Shapiro. So he said, I don't remember which Mussar rabbi, I think it was the Sab Mikelma, I can't remember which Mussar rabbi, but he said that he sat his students down, and the Talmud says that the fire of Gehenna is 1/60th of the fire of fire in this world is 1/60th of the fire of Gehenna. Again, it's not a physical fire, whatever that means. 1/60 means a taste of it. You know, in the laws of Kashrus, if you drop 1 in 60, so then it becomes nullified. So it's either it's so little it's not there, or it's 1 in 59, it's just barely there. However you want to understand it. So what the Saba said was to his students is, okay, now take your finger, imagine putting it in fire and how it feels. Okay, now multiply times 2, times 3, times 4, picture it, times 60. Now take your next finger. And Moshe said to us that this exercise went on for a very long time. So they understood what it was, they're afraid. So when we tell you this great news that all Jews are getting into the world to come, and maybe it's even illogical. The sages of the Mishnah said, well, these people are out. But there's the fine reading, the Darsha Rishumas, once the imprint, you're all going to get in. But don't get there from the way of saying, oh, God get me in there some way, I'm going to go and do what I want to do. You don't want to do that. Because it's not your real self. Your real self is the striving to be the greatest you can be, and to be godlike. And second of all, it's not going to help you. It's going to be a lot worse. You don't want to do that way. That is the amazing story of this Parsha. Bilam wanted to be, when he saw it, he wanted to be like a Jew. He said, I want to be that pure. I want to be in there. Okay, he got in there, the Jews that don't get in. You can get your name mentioned. But then he was so negative, he made the Jews stumble by saying, you're so great. You're getting which I was like you. They said, whoa, great. But the lesson you have to understand is what the sages wanted to put in the davening. They didn't because it was too much. Read the Parsha of Balak 2 times a day. So when you say the Shema, you got to think it. You got to think, I accept, I want to do, I'm going to do everything I can. At the same time, say, and if I mess up, Hashem's going to get me there. I don't have to be afraid. So that's the comfort that I hope we can all get. And even though the sages didn't put it into the Shema, they taught us this Gemara so we can add the thought ourselves and realize that Hashem's going to make sure that we get into the world to come and we become